Oh, hey fellas. Just plugging away at the P61 Black Widow. I've been getting some things accomplished. Hopefully after I get the engines built here, and I'm about halfway through those, everything else is going to go together pretty well, and it should be downhill from here. Got the glass put on the fuselage, and got the cockpit all closed up. So this may be boring for some people, but for those guys guys and gals, or whoever, people, I want to be politically correct. For those people that are building the kit and want to kind of see how it goes together, then this might be of some benefit, because I'm kind of veering away from the directions with especially with the engines. So let's take a look at what I got going on. So here's the progress that I made, fellas. Start off, I solved my blue blouse girl problem, and I got these decals, these aftermarket decals from Superscale. $10, figured it was worth it. So I'm going to use her and probably the Lady in the Dark print there. I am going to still mask off the number. They do have the correct number, 239408. And I'm also going to mask off and paint the wing walk lines and the stars and bars. I've already got a mask start. I'm trying out a new mask material that Duke's Models recommended, and haven't painted with it yet, but it seems to cut pretty good. So we'll see how that works out. I've got the fuselage halves together, and not a whole lot of problems to speak of. The side panel here kind of stuck out, so I just put a little bit of extra thin in between that and the fuselage and clamped it, and it stuck. The nose cone went on pretty well. There was a little bit of a gap, and we'll try to zoom in here. There's a little insert that fits inside the fuselage once you get it together, and you can attach the radar unit to it. But since I'm painting this all up, I didn't bother putting any of the radar equipment in. I guess if you're going to leave this transparent, then that might be an option, but yeah, we're not doing that. So basically, I don't know if I had that sticking out a little bit too far or what, but the nose cone didn't fit exactly flush. There's a real fine gap, and I just used some Mr. Servicer 1000, put a couple coats in there, and that seemed to have taken care of it. This top part seems to fit together pretty well. I can't really tell because of the difference in material and the clear part that it comes in, if there are any little tiny gaps, but we'll know when I put some primer on it. But it fit down pretty well. There was some seam issues. They weren't major, not like you get in an old Revel kit. Right here. But I took care of them with a little bit of my Zap-A-Gap CA glue and some pigment, so I could tell where I was putting it. And you can see I re-scribed the panel line and re-riveted with my Rosie the Riveter tool. Same up here. It's all smooth. But again, once you put primer on it, you'll notice if you got any gaps that you missed. The only fit issue as far as the windows go, this piece right here, there was a little bit of a gap. So instead of filling it, what I did is I took a little piece of plastic card and I glued it on there, cut it out, and then I got it painted. So that'll kind of fill that little bitty gap. Everything else seems to fit pretty well. This end piece fits perfectly. Just like that. The only issue that I have with the windows is they come in different pieces. This main piece is separate from these two panels on top. You got to glue them in, and then they've got these little bitty window panels that you have to glue in. And I used extra thin. It did discolor the plastic a little bit, but I think it's limited to where the window frame is. So I shouldn't have that showing through once I paint it. Masking this off was a bit of a chore, as you can probably imagine. I spent the morning masking off all these window panels. So my next step is going to be to put this bad boy in and get it straight and glued down, and then take care of any little bitty gaps that I might have. Looks like I may have one there. Just depends on how well I get it glued. And I'm going to use a combination of extra thin for some of the major parts, and then probably this back piece, since it fits so well and there's a lot of surface area for it to grab onto. I may just use some white glue for that. We'll see when I get there, but it fits down pretty well. That's about it. I'm gonna get to work on closing this up. Oh, the bottom pieces, since I was closing this, that's always almost always a pain in the butt. I've got the front landing gear, and it comes with, you know, a bunch of different panels here that you can have open. But obviously, since I'm having this in flight, I close those up. There weren't a whole lot of issues. I might have had something a little off when I glued the cockpit in, and this was probably the worst fitting part, where it meets up with the landing gear bay doors. They are just a tad bit off in places, and they don't exactly line up real well. But I think once you get it painted, you're not going to notice. And you know, from what I've seen in these old World War II planes, a lot of these panels don't fit precisely. But I did use a little bit of Mr. Surfacer and some other putty just to kind of knock down some of those big seam lines that I got in there. You know, I could go off and sand it all flush and make it all perfect. I'm going to lose a lot of detail, and to be honest with you, once you start doing that, it sometimes looks worse than if you just left it. So we're leaving that. Once I get it primered, we'll see what it looks like, and I see if I need to tackle anything else with that. So that's what I've got going on. I'm going to get to work on the engines and closing this up, and so probably the next part will be the engines. The engines, and if you don't like little parts, then this kit isn't for you. So I've been working on the engine for the last couple days, and I've kind of veered away from the instructions a little bit. It comes in two halves. You got to glue these together. But basically it fits well. I got one finished. I just finished one up. And it's pretty detailed. I mean, like the rest of the kit, it's pretty detailed. It does fit together pretty well. I left some stuff off the back. Now, it's got this part right here, and you see all these little bitty parts that goes on the back. Now, this is going to fit inside the engine cowl, so you're not going to see that anyway. So I just left that off. I think it's a waste of time since you're not going to see it. So I left that off. What I do like about this kit, as opposed to some of the other engines that I've built in other kits, is all the piping and stuff is all one piece. As you can see here, it's all one piece. It just goes in like that. I know in a lot of Tamiya kits, they'll make the exhaust piping, you know, 5 different pieces. You got to plug it in, and they never seem to quite fit right. But this fits perfectly. It's all one piece. Just sticks in the back cylinders. Make sure I don't get these mixed up. I got them marked 1 and 2. Would hate for that to happen. I'll check and make sure I got that right. But yeah, I mean, it all fits together pretty well. I did make a boo-boo on this back piece, and I started with the back piece, one of these, I guess the cylinders that go in the back, because I usually do that since that's not going to be seen. It gives me an idea how things are going to go together, and if I make a mistake, then it's not going to hurt me. And I did make a mistake on this. I don't know if these are cylinder heads. I'm not going to pretend to know what I'm talking about as far as engines go. But these little, zoom in a little bit. These little cylinder heads and little wires that come across here. These are the cylinder heads. And you put them on there, and then you take these little pieces, which are a pain to clean up, and then they go across and connect. Well, what I did is I had them on wrong and put them right here instead of right here, and they didn't fit right. But I kind of forced them in there, and when I got to looking at actual pictures, which I should have done prior, because I built some of these before and I thought I knew what I was doing, I had them in wrong, so I had to cut them out. But no harm, no foul. It's on the back. Nobody's going to see it. I did get it correct on the front. And I guess if you wanted to, you could add some wires from these little things. I think they're like 2 wires that go up into the cylinders, but I'm not gonna mess with that. They look pretty detailed as is. So that's the engines. A lot of little fiddly parts. They do give you these little wires down here that plug into the front, and they're not too bad. Trying to clean these up, I find it's best just to clip them off the sprue as best you can, put them in there, glue them down, then you can clean them up that way once they're on there. Take an X-Acto blade and kind of clean those up. The back framing I thought was going to be a pain in the butt, and it really wasn't that bad. You've got, I think, 4 or 5 pieces. You've got this top piece, this piece, and then these 2 side pieces, and then a little bitty piece back here that all have to come together. And then you glue this round thing on, which fits in the engine like so. And then this attaches inside of the halves of the where the wings go. So that should be simple, and it's going to make things, zoom out, it's going to make things really easy to paint, because I'm going to leave the engine out. I'm going to paint it separately, but I have to install these into these halves here. So basically I've got this all glued together, the engine mounts. I'm going to glue it inside of the halves of the tail booms, I guess they call it. And that way I can leave the engines out, paint them separately. I don't have to mask anything. And once I'm done with all my painting, then I can just glue these in. It's a pretty easy fit. So that's a plus. That's exciting. One other thing is the propellers and the spinners. Grab these real quick. Now, they give you extra propellers. I don't know if they've got another, I don't know if this is just an engine set that they use for a lot of their World War II planes. But the propellers and the spinners come in 2 pieces. And it goes like this. You zoom in a little bit. So these come in 2 pieces. And the real plane doesn't have this panel line here. They do have some little panel lines. That's not all one piece, but from what I've seen in pictures, there's nothing along here. So what they have you do is take the propellers, and they do fit quite snugly. This one I haven't cleaned up much, but you're supposed to fit these in here and then glue the spinner on. Well, the spinner on this plane is going to be red, and I want to get rid of that seam line. So what I've done is I've glued one together. I'm going to clean up that seam line, get that all squared away. And because the propellers have this little post that fits in there, what I've done is I've cut the post off, and I've just drilled a little hole so I know which one is the bottom. And these will fit right in the hole, and they're pretty snug. It's a pretty good fit. That way I can I can paint the propellers separate and the spinner separate, and then just fit them in there, and it's nice and tight, and I can glue them in and not have any problems with that. So that's going to work out as well. I'm loving this kit. I think that's about it. Let me zoom out, and I got the window glass on. We can see here, it came on with not a whole lot of issues. I did use extra thin quick setting because it's not as hot as a regular Tamiya extra thin. And I got them all down pretty snug. There were a couple little gaps like right along here. Like right along here there was a little gap. I used my plastic card for the other side, and there's a little bitty gap right there. What I did is I just took some clear window glue and I dabbed it in there, and that way when I paint it, because I'm going to paint all this over top green, the interior green color, that's going to hopefully have had that filled that gap. And what I found out on previous builds by experience is if I try to put putty in there and fill that seam, then you can see the white putty on from the outside. You can see it on the inside because it doesn't obviously get painted on the inside once you get the windows in. But if you fill it with like clear glue, what happens is it fills it up, and it's basically just like a regular window, and you can paint over it and you can't see anything showing through from the inside. I used a little bit of my clear mask, or my blue masking fluid, to mask up these windows because they are indented a little bit, and I didn't want to put much pressure on them and push them out just in case that they're not in there real well. I tried to be stingy with the extra thin so I didn't craze the inside of the windows. But so that's what I've got going on. This is shaping up. The engines are shaping up, and I should be on the downhill slide with this thing. I think after the engines, all the little fiddly parts are going to be done. The only issue that I'm leery of is getting the wings and everything aligned, and how these wings fit to the main part of the fuselage. So that's where I'm at, and we will come back whenever I get the wings ready to glue on so I can show you how that works. And we should be good to go in the next few days for priming and painting. Catch you then.